So, Microsoft just released the RTM for Windows 11 24H2. I guess that means it's about time to take a look at it, huh? Stay tuned. Everyone was expecting Windows 12 in 2024, and it looks like technically we're getting it, but it's not going to be Windows 12. More on that at the end of the video. I might have another conspiracy theory brewing. Today we're looking at the upcoming Windows 11 24H2 that just a few days ago, at least based on when this video is being recorded, was released on RTM. RTM simply means release to manufacturer. So this is more than likely going to be the feature set that we're going to see when 24H2 finally gets released to the public. So it's about time that I stop dragging my feet and actually do a video on it. So that's what we're going to do today. But first, I gotta pay some bills, so check out today's sponsor. Is your copy of Windows 10 unactivated? Well, it doesn't have to be, because with today's sponsor, VIP SCD Key, you can get a valid Windows 10 license for under $20. Stop dealing with that stupid watermark on the desktop, the valid license for Windows 10. Also, with an activated copy of Windows 10, you can upgrade to Windows 11 for free. Just go to the link in the description below and pick up a valid Windows 10 license key. During checkout, use the code CYBERCPU for a 25% discount. Once you have your key, go to your activation settings in Windows 10 and click on the link that says Change Product Key. Enter the product key you just purchased and hit Activate. Now you don't have to deal with that stupid watermark that come with running an unactivated copy of Windows 10. Now, on with the video. So Windows 11 24H2 isn't set to be released until around September, maybe even October of this year. However, the ARM version of 24H2 is set to be released earlier, in time for the June release of the Quantum Snapdragon X Elite processor. This is going to be a 12-core ARM processor designed specifically for notebooks. As if working on Windows PCs wasn't hard enough, now we're going to have to deal with two completely different CPU architectures. Isn't that great? You can probably sense that I'm not super excited about Windows on ARM, but that's not what this video is about. But we have to talk about it just for a little bit, because that's one of the big changes in Windows 11 24H2. Microsoft has made a lot of improvements in 24H2 that directly relate to Windows on ARM. Most of these are definitely due to the upcoming release of the Snapdragon X Elite, which will essentially make Windows PCs competitive again in the mobile market against Apple's new iMacs, which also are based on Apple's own ARM processors. One of the notable changes in Windows 11 24H2 is that Microsoft will be dropping support for 32-bit ARM apps. And that's honestly not surprising, because pretty much all ARM operating systems have done exactly the same thing. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any other good breakdown of other improvements that 24H2 will be making for ARM support, but hopefully they're going to be concentrating on improvements to performance, because I've played with a few Windows on ARM systems and they're not exactly fun to use. But then again, we really don't have a good ARM processor yet either, so the Snapdragon X Elite might be exactly what Windows on ARM needs. Now I guess I'm going to need to go find all of the tools that I currently use in Windows for the ARM architecture, but that's a rant for another video. As with all other build updates that Windows comes out with, 24H2 should also be a free upgrade. I honestly don't see that changing anytime soon. Microsoft has not only offered build updates for free, but entire version updates for free for quite some time. However, this should still be an optional update as long as you're running a currently supported version of Windows 11. The build updates are on a 2-year support cycle. So currently, the original build of Windows 11 is already out of support, and 22H2 will lose support later this year. But if you're on 23H2, 24H2 won't be a mandatory update. Also, I've heard a lot of talk about new hardware requirements for Windows 11 and 24H2. Personally, I don't think a lot of these stories are true. At minimum, I think they're a misunderstanding of what's happening. You see, there are some features coming to Windows 11 24H2 that do have new hardware requirements. However, I don't believe that those are going to be requirements to use the operating system, but rather requirements to use certain features within the operating system. But you know what? I'll talk about those later in the video when we actually get to those features. Personally, I think if your system supports the hardware requirements to load Windows 11 now, then it will always support the hardware requirements to run Windows 11 in the future. Now, I might be totally wrong about that, but I'm pretty confident that that's the way it's going to be. Because you know what? Personally, I don't think Microsoft wants more bad press in regards to hardware requirements. Either way, once 24H2 is released, I will definitely be doing a video on how to install it on unsupported hardware anyway. Now that we've gone over all of that, let's jump on my system right here that already has 24H2 installed, and I'll show you some of the changes that I found noteworthy. Okay, so here we are in Windows 11 24H2. If we click on the Start menu here, go into Settings, go into System, then I'm going to scroll all the way down to About, and you can see right here we are on 24H2. Now this is build number 261.00.1, and this is the release that Microsoft claims to be the RTM. At least that's what I found in all of the research I did for this video. Now let's take a look at some of the new features that come with 24H2. So if we close this, the first thing that I want to do is I want to go into File Explorer right here. I'm going to go into our Documents folder. So as you can see right here, I got a couple of text documents in here. And one thing, if you guys have watched my videos for a long period of time, you know is that I absolutely despise this new context menu. And one of the reasons why I despise it is because of the stupid icons that typically show up at the top. Obviously, you don't see them in this one here, but if I right click on one of these files, you're going to see it. So now, new to Windows 11 24H2, now if you click on them, as you can see, you don't just have icons, you actually have the words themselves that go along with the icons, which I think is a pretty good addition. In fact, it actually kind of makes me almost start to like the context menu, maybe a little bit. Now, while we're in the context menu, another thing that's new to 24H2 is if you go down here to compress to, as you can see, we can still compress zip files like before, but now we can also compress 7-zip and tar files. So by doing this, all you have to do is click on that and it will create a 7-zip archive, just like it used to create just a zip archive. I think this is a huge addition to Windows 11 because before, the ability to open these, that was one thing, but the ability to create them is honestly a feature that I don't know why they didn't implement at the same time. However, one thing that you will notice is that this compress to function is only in the Windows 11 context menu. So if you go down to show more options and you go to the old-fashioned context menu, normally you would go to the send to menu to create a zip folder. However, in this case, it's just going to create an old-fashioned zip folder. It's not going to create a 7-zip or a tar archive. So if you want to use the new compress to function, you have to do it from the Windows 11 context menu. So this is going to be kind of a feature that's only going to be available to people who haven't disabled this menu. So I guess I may have to stop disabling this menu if I want to use that. But additionally, on top of just being able to create these different archives, you can also click on the additional options here. And with that, you can actually kind of more finitely dial in how you want your archive to be compressed. You can either pick the archive from the list. So if we want to go to say 7-zip, it'll give you all the different compression methods that are available for 7-zip, as well as the compression level that you can use. And same thing is if you go to use the tar, you can change your different compression methods for tar as well. And same thing for zip. However, zip is a little bit less customizable than the other ones. And that's one of the reasons why tar and zip was added to Windows 11 in the first place, because they are much more robust compression methods. So now that we talked about that, let's go on to the next one. And I think this one has to be probably one of the coolest additions to Windows 11. Now, have you ever opened a command prompt? So if you go say CMD and you open a command prompt, have you ever been here and forgotten to open it as administrator and then you go to run an administrator command and it doesn't work? Like for instance, if I was to go power CFG -H off, that essentially turns hibernation off. And then I hit enter, it goes, it requires administrator privilege in order to execute that command. So you got to go, you got to close your command prompt, you got to open it again, you got to go run as administrator, hit yes in order to run the command that you wanted. Now, if we close this and go back to a regular command prompt, one thing that a lot of Linux users would know that we have the command in Linux to use sudo, which essentially means super user do. So if we were to run that, we could actually take whatever command from a non-administrator profile and we could run it as the administrator, so we don't actually have to open the entire command prompt as an administrator. Now, with Windows 11 24H2, they've given us the sudo command. So if we were to write sudo power cfg /h off and then hit enter, now of course it tells me that sudo is disabled on this machine. To enable it, go to developer settings. The first time you run it, it'll tell you this, and you can actually click right here in order to open it. You just hold your control key and hit click and it'll open straight to the developer settings. And if you go right down to the bottom where it says enable sudo, you just flip it on, hit yes to the user account control, and you could end there. However, there's one more thing that I would recommend changing. If you drop this down, right here it says in a new window. All this will do is it'll open a new window with the administrator command and then run the command and close it. So if you want to actually be able to make sure the command ran and there was no errors, then I would recommend doing it inline. And what this would do is it runs the command inline in the command window that you're currently running. And then if we do that, all we have to do is go down right here, go back to our thing. We can hit the up arrow to refill out our command that we had typed before and hit enter. And then at this case, what it does is it gives us the user account control. And at this point, you can just hit yes and it runs the command and it disabled hibernation. However, I should probably turn hibernation back on because, you know, it is what it is. But either way, if you ever want to know how to turn off hibernation, that's how you do it. Now, alternatively too, while we're in the settings menu, I wanted to point this out. This isn't new to 24H2, but while I was putting together the points that I wanted to show off in this video, I also remember that I just want to highlight this one real quick, is if you're in developer settings and you do turn this on, then right here, this setting up here where it says end task, I would highly recommend turning this one on too. And what this does is it adds, when you right click on an application down in this taskbar here, when you right click on it, it adds this end task selection into the right click menu, which honestly, I think is hugely helpful. So that's another one I would turn on. But like I said, this isn't brand new to 24H2, but it's still one that I'd like to highlight. Anyway, so if we close settings now, the next thing I want to look at, ironically, is back in settings. I guess I shouldn't have closed it in the first place, but if you go open up settings and you go into system, and then from there you go into power, you'll notice that in 24H2, you have more control over your power and sleep buttons. So it gives you control over the things that the buttons on the computer actually do, which you had to go into advanced power settings before in order to change in earlier versions of Windows 11. And also, if you're doing this on a notebook, it will also give you the option to decide what opening and closing the lid of the notebook does right here from within settings. So obviously, Microsoft is trying to move more settings into Windows 11 settings to make it more complete and give us less reason to have to go to the control panel to be able to change settings. And also, while we're here in the energy saving mode, if we click on here, we can also turn on energy saver, which this is essentially just a way to save power on your system. Now, this used to only be available on notebooks to save battery power. But as you can see, we're on a desktop now and it's available on the desktop. However, I'm not actually going to turn that on because I'm currently screen recording and I don't want to mess up any performance that the system gives me right now. So it does limit your performance in order to save power. That's kind of how it does it. Okay, so we're done with settings here. We can go ahead and close this. And the next thing I want to show you guys is the quick settings panel. Now, if you're not familiar with this, it's right down at the bottom where you see your network and your sound icon. If you click on that, it opens up the settings panel. And from the settings panel, one of the new features in this is before you could only have 6 buttons and you had to decide which 6 things you were going to show. But now, as if you notice at the side right here, you actually have pages now. So you can create different pages for your quick settings icons. And then while we're in quick settings, I went ahead and plugged a wireless USB card into this computer just so I could show off this new feature. And this one's huge. I don't know why Microsoft hasn't had this in earlier versions of Windows. I think this affects Windows 10 as well. But if you go here to click on your wireless networks, as you see a new refresh button button right here at the bottom corner. And if you click on that, what it'll do is actually refresh the wireless network. So if you know one should be here, there's always reasons to refresh. Well, prior to having this little refresh button, you actually had to close it, go back, open it, and then every time you'd open it, it would refresh it one time. And then you'd close it, go back, open it. It was kind of annoying. Now, all you got to do is hit refresh, and it'll refresh the list. And then since we're down in this corner right here, if we go down to the bottom and right click on our network icon, you can see another new setting right here is for diagnose network problems. And if you click on that, it essentially goes through a new diagnostic system that Microsoft has added in 24H2 that will help you diagnose why your network isn't working. So we have yet another wizard that probably won't actually do anything to fix our problem, but it's there. So I wanted to include it in this video. Now, as you can see, there doesn't seem to be a lot of huge changes to 24H2, but then at the same time, there are some pretty huge updates in 24H2. For instance, the labels on the context menu might actually make me not hate the context menu, at least not as much as I did before. That's saying a lot, because here's the thing. My biggest complaint has always been the time that I've had to waste by hovering over the icons because I don't remember what the specific icons represent. The text labels are a huge upgrade. Now, if all they did now was remove the icons and put the text in line with the other text, then it would be perfect. But then again, it would make it the classic context menu, wouldn't it? Also, support for creating 7-zip and tar archives is huge as well. I'm honestly not sure why this wasn't implemented when extraction of those archives was added to 23H2, but I'm glad it's finally have the ability to do that from within 24H2, because it's nice to have the native ability to create those archives from within Windows. There are also some features that are supposed to come out with 24H2 that haven't been implemented yet. Now, there's a chance they simply won't be implemented in time and they'll be added at a later point. And that's happened quite a bit, but I wanted to at least mention them while we're here. One of these is the ability to use your phone as a webcam, built natively into Windows. Now, this is a feature that you can do right now with third-party software, but having it built into Windows could make it quite convenient. Also, 24H2 will officially support USB 4. This is great, at least once we have hardware that supports USB 4. Now, some other features that either haven't been quite implemented yet or have kind of been implemented but don't really work are some of the new AI features in 24H2. One of these is going to be super resolution, which honestly, I think I'm looking forward to the most. This is essentially going to be the same tech that RTX uses with DLSS, but it will be handled by the processor instead of the GPU. Unfortunately though, this tech requires an NPU in your processor. So the ability to use it, you'll need to have one of the new Intel Core Ultras, the new AMD Ryzen 8000s, or even the Quantum Snapdragon X Elite. So unlike how being able to use DLSS just requires a new GPU, using Windows Super Resolution will require a new system altogether. But it will be nice once it comes out, and I will definitely be testing it at least once I have a computer that supports it. Another AI feature coming to Windows that I don't know for sure will be in 24H2 or in a future update will be something called voice clarity. This will be a native Windows feature that helps to remove background noise from your microphone so that when you're using a microphone, it will give you better sounding audio. Finally, the last AI feature that I read while researching for this will be natural language search queries. This will essentially allow you to search for things using natural language, like asking your computer to show you the pictures you took last month at the aquarium and having it actually show you the pictures that you took last month at the aquarium. And honestly, I think that's going to be a pretty cool use of AI. However, I don't know if these features are going to be ready in time for the release of 24H2, or if they'll even work on current hardware in the first place. I do know that super resolution feature will require a neural processing unit, but I don't know if the other AI features will require the same. However, this goes back to what we talked about back at the beginning of the video in regards to 24H2 hardware requirements. While there are many features coming to Windows 11 that will require hardware like an MPU, this hardware won't be required to run the operating system, but rather only be required to use those specific features. Which, honestly, I have no problem with. If Microsoft wants to take advantage of new tech, then that's awesome. However, making that new tech a requirement to use the operating system, well, I'm sorry, but that just sucks. With that said, I did promise you a conspiracy theory, and I'm going to deliver on that. Now, we were supposed to get Windows 12 this year, and that's simply not going to happen. In fact, many people believe that 24H2 actually is Windows 12. I mean, all Microsoft would have to do is slightly tweak the UI a little bit and call it Windows 12. I mean, it's not like they haven't done that before. So, then, why is Windows 12 being delayed? This is where my conspiracy theory comes in. If you saw my video previously discussing the conspiracy theory behind the Windows 11 hardware requirements, I think it's related. I think Microsoft knows that they made a huge mistake with Windows 11. And with Windows 10 reaching end of life in about a year and a half, they need to make a decision if they're going to stick to the 3-year version cycle like they've rekindled with Windows 11, or if they're going to go back to the rolling release that Windows 10 was supposed to be. I mean, here's the thing. Microsoft doesn't make money off of Windows releases. Microsoft has essentially become an advertising company, just like Google or Facebook and pretty much all of the tech industry. So their profitability is on them spying on you and what you use your computer for, and then displaying ads. They actually lose money by having to support a fragmented operating system landscape. So, if Windows 12 would have been released in 2024, like the rumors suggested, Microsoft would be supporting Windows 10, Windows 11, and Windows 12 simultaneously. This is literally the problem that led to Windows 10 becoming a rolling release in the first place. At the time, Microsoft was supporting Windows 7, Windows 8, and Windows 10. The reason why they said Windows 10 was going to be the last version of Windows was because they wanted it to age out Windows 7 and Windows 8, so they only had one version of Windows to support as a rolling release. So, could the delay of Windows 12 be an indication that Windows 11 might become the rolling release that Windows 10 was supposed to be, or was, until Microsoft decided to drop Windows 11 in our lap? Essentially, that's what I'm getting at. Maybe Windows 12 is dead, and Windows 11 will be the last version of Windows that we get. However, I don't think Microsoft is going to make the same mistake as publicly announcing that. They kind of got egg on their face the last time they did. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But in the meantime, we have a pretty good update coming to Windows 11 in 24H2. With each update that comes out, Microsoft makes it a little harder to hate Windows 11, and that's a good thing. If you'd like to try this beta build here of Windows 11, then go ahead and check out this video where I show you how to create ISOs for beta builds of Windows. The build that I'm currently using is 26100.1, and you'll find it in the Canary channel. As always, you guys have a great day.